It is a truth universally acknowledged, though seldom spoken in the gleaming, glass and steel boardrooms or the manicured perfection of a startup's launch party, that to be in business is to court a particular kind of suffering. The aphorism, whispered in the quiet corners of a failed venture or etched into the weary smile of a seasoned entrepreneur, carries the weight of hard-won wisdom. Being in business breaks everyone. You just eventually get strong in your broken places. This is not a statement of despair, but a quiet, profound map of a metamorphosis. It speaks to a journey that is less about building an empire and more about the unbuilding and subsequent rebuilding of a self. To understand this process is to move beyond the simplistic narratives of success and failure and into the gritty, sacred terrain of human resilience. From the perspective of a life coach, the initial breaking is often the very thing the client is desperately trying to avoid, and thus the very thing holding them back. We see the individual who has tied their entire identity to the metrics of their business. The first crack appears not as a catastrophe, but as a subtle tremor. A key client leaves, a product launch underwhelms, a negative review feels like a personal indictment. The ego, that fragile construct we've so carefully assembled, begins to falter. The life coach's role here is not to prevent the breaking, but to reframe it. We ask, what if this isn't a sign of your inadequacy, but a signpost pointing toward a necessary evolution? The identity that was founder, CEO, visionary, these are roles, not the core of the person. The breaking is the process by which the role is stripped away, often violently, to reveal the raw, unvarnished human beneath. This is a terrifying but essential liberation. You are not your plummeting quarterly returns. You are not your failed marketing campaign. You are the consciousness observing these events, and within that consciousness lies a capacity for response that is infinitely more powerful than any single outcome. The strength that begins to form in these early broken places is the strength of discernment, the ability to separate your worth from your workload, your essence from your expenses. But the breaking is not a single event. It is a series of fractures, a slow weathering. It is the relentless pressure of payroll, the quiet betrayal of a trusted partner, the slow dawning that a market has shifted and left your life's work seemingly obsolete. This is where the psychologist would delve deeper into the architecture of the psyche under siege. The human brain is wired for pattern recognition and threat avoidance. Business, by its very nature, is a landscape of unpredictable patterns and constant low-grade threats. This triggers the amygdala, our ancient alarm bell, flooding the system with cortisol and adrenaline. Chronic activation of this stress response is a form of systemic breaking. It leads to anxiety, burnout, cynicism, and a diminished capacity for the very creativity and strategic thought the business requires. The psychological breaking, therefore, is not a sign of weakness. It is a logical, physiological response to an environment of sustained uncertainty. The healing, the getting strong, is not about building a thicker wall to keep the stress out. That is a fool's errand. It is about learning to regulate the nervous system, to retrain the brain to perceive challenge not as an existential threat, but as a complex puzzle. It involves the difficult work of sitting with failure without being consumed by shame. It requires grieving the loss of a particular future you had envisioned, the what could have been, and accepting the reality of what is. This is the process of post-traumatic growth. In the broken places of your confidence, you develop a more nuanced, self-compassionate understanding of your limits. In the shattered illusion of total control, you cultivate a rugged flexibility, an ability to pivot and adapt. The psyche, like a bone, does not simply heal back to its original state. It forms a callus at the site of the break, a mass of tissue that is denser, stronger, and more resilient than the bone was before. The psychological calluses are what we call wisdom, patience, and emotional intelligence, and it is here that the author, the weaver of narratives, would step in to find the poetry in this painful process. Every great story, from the epic poems of antiquity to the modern novel, is a story of a protagonist being broken. Odysseus is shattered by his long wandering exile from home. His strength is not in avoiding the Cyclops or the Sirens, but in being transformed by them. He returns to Ithaca, not as the same brash warrior who left, but as a wiser, sadder, more complete man. His kingdom is not just the physical land he reclaims, but the inner kingdom of his hard-won maturity, So it is with the person in business. You begin with a story of disruption, of innovation, of creating something from nothing. This story is your ship, and you set sail with grand ambitions. But the sea of commerce is treacherous. Storms of competition arise. There are doldrums of cash flow. There are siren songs of easy money that lead to ruin, and cyclopean competitors that seem impossible to defeat. Your ship will be battered. The hull will spring leaks. The mast may crack. You will at times feel utterly shipwrecked. This is the breaking. And this is where the second, more profound story is written. It is not written on business plans or balance sheets, but on the soul. It is the story of how you patched the hull with the timber of perseverance. It is the story of how you used the splintered mast to fashion a new oar. It is the story of learning to navigate by the stars of your core values when all your digital compasses have failed. The broken places on the boat are no longer weaknesses. They are the unique markers of its journey, the evidence of its endurance. They are what make the vessel seaworthy in a way a pristine, untested ship could never be. The author knows that a character who gets everything they want on the first try is not a hero. They are a fantasy. The true hero is the one who is forged in the crucible of loss and limitation, whose strength is a direct consequence of their suffering. The ultimate strength, then, that forms in these broken places, is a synthesis of these three perspectives. It is the coach's empowered agency, the psychologist's integrated trauma, and the author's redemptive narrative. It is the quiet confidence that comes not from a guarantee of success, but from the knowledge that you have faced down the specter of total failure and survived. You have sat across from the banker, the lawyer, the disappointed employee, and you have borne the weight of that responsibility. You have made the gut-wrenching pivot, the painful layoff, the humble apology. You have stared into the abyss of your own limitations and have not looked away. This strength is not loud or boastful. It is a deep, settled calm. It is the ability to make a decision, not from a place of fear, but from a place of considered choice. It is the capacity to listen to criticism without crumbling, and to accept praise without becoming inflated. It is the wisdom to know that every victory is temporary, and every setback is a teacher. Your broken places become the very source of your empathy, allowing you to connect genuinely with other struggling entrepreneurs, not as a triumphant guru, but as a fellow traveler on a difficult road. They become the source of your creativity, as you are forced to find new solutions in the absence of old broken models. They become the bedrock of your character, because a character built only on success is a house of cards, but a character refined by failure is a fortress. So to anyone in the throes of that breaking, feeling the very foundations of their ambition and self-worth crumble, know this: you are not off path. This is not a deviation from the journey of business. It is the central, essential, and most transformative leg of the trip. The goal is not to arrive at your destination with an unblemished record and a perfectly preserved, fragile ego. The goal is to arrive scarred, strong, and whole, having been reassembled by your own hands into a person capable of holding not just success, but the profound, messy, and beautiful reality of the entire journey. The world does not need more unbroken people. It needs more people who have the courage to be broken and the tenacity to become strong, irrevocably strong in those very places.